So I was watching a Huberman Lab episode, and I learned something really surprising.
This is why protein ingestion alone is anabolic, right? It will help you grow muscle independent of even moving.
So just eating protein will grow your muscles?
Yeah, certainly.
With no weight training?
Correct.
I am betting that most people are not aware of that fact.
That's Andy Galpin, a professor of kinesiology, and he has over 100 peer-reviewed papers and presentations. This guy really knows his stuff. And when he said that just eating protein helps you build muscle, and that's independent of exercise, I was like, well, even more reason to eat an absurd amount of protein. But then I started wondering, how does it actually work? So I started doing some digging, and I found that there's actually a lot more to it, of course. So scientists are finding that protein is actually stimulating a very specific type of cell signaling pathway. It's called the mTOR cell signaling pathway. Now, this mTOR pathway actually regulates muscle growth. It's this master regulator. It's listening to all these environmental cues and determining how it's going to regulate most of the cells in your body. So if protein is actually stimulating the mTOR pathway, then it makes sense that it would be stimulating muscle growth. But how much muscle growth can it actually induce? So scientists can actually measure your muscle protein synthesis rates, aka how fast you're building muscle at any given time. And many studies have shown that after about 1 to 3 hours after you've eaten protein, there's a statistically significant increase in your rate of muscle protein synthesis. So this graph is showing the muscle protein synthesis rates in people who just ate protein and didn't do any exercise. So this is before eating protein. The subjects are actually in a fasted state. So they didn't eat anything after 10 p.m. the previous evening. And then the next morning at 6 a.m., the researchers measured their protein synthesis rates before they ate anything. And then after that, the participants consumed a protein supplement, and then their muscle protein synthesis rates were measured again to see how it changed. So that's the 1 to 3 hours after. Now, this is a statistically significant increase in their synthesis rates. And this kind of a study has been done countless times with very similar results. Now, what about 3 to 5 hours after eating protein? The rates are actually dropping off again. So after eating protein, you do get a boost, but not for very long. And again, this is without exercising. But what if you do exercise? What happens if you add resistance training into the equation? So you're still eating protein, but now you're also lifting weights. What happens to your muscle protein synthesis rates? Now, here's what they found. So this is taking data from the first graph that we saw, where participants were only eating protein, and is comparing that to a new data set where participants are exercising and eating protein. Now, this is the baseline, just like we saw before. So this is before eating any protein or eating protein plus exercising. Now, after 1 to 3 hours post-exercising and eating protein, we see that the results are actually pretty similar for the non-exercise group and the exercise group. But then the 3 to 5 hours after is actually way different. So now we see, like before, for the non-exercise group, that protein synthesis rate drops off. But in the exercise group, their protein synthesis rate increases even more. So in other words, just eating protein gives us a stimulus for muscle protein synthesis. But when you exercise, you get an even greater stimulus. And that duration is a lot longer. You're in this window of muscle protein synthesis for much longer than if you were to just eat protein. How much longer? Well, a lot of studies are showing that it could be up to 24 to even 48 hours after you exercised. That's a long time to be building muscle. Now, that rate of muscle protein synthesis does tend to drop off over those 48 hours, but still, that's pretty good. So eating protein does stimulate muscle growth. But if you're not pairing it with resistance training, you're likely not going to see actual muscle gains. If anything, when you're just eating protein, you might be able to maintain your muscle mass. But if you aren't regularly exercising, then you might lose muscle mass over time, even if you are eating plenty of protein. Now, I have a video coming out pretty soon on all things protein, like what type of proteins do you want to prioritize, or the timing of when you eat protein after exercising. Does that really matter? So all of that will be covered in this video, so keep a lookout for it. All of the studies I referenced for this video are linked in the description below. Also, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Okay, I'll see you in the next one.